A wild man. Wild man.
Hola, Papi.
Hey, how you doing, wild man?
So many years ago, you had this friend from Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
He was getting construction done on his house. I guess they were constructing a new house of his, right?
Yeah, he was part of his house, correct.
And very innocently, there was a penny. I don't know how I found the penny. But I think there was an exposed wall or some sort of exposed that was going to later get sealed.
Mm-hmm.
And I put the penny there, and I'm assuming it later got sealed in the wall. I didn't do this for nefarious reasons, obviously. It was just a neat little thing. You know how you put pennies on top of picture frames at your work and you waited to see if anybody would ever notice?
Yeah.
That was very much what was going on here. And I was a child. I put a penny, and it probably got sealed in a wall somewhere.
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's a fun thing to do. Also, knowing that it's kind of like a time capsule. That maybe one day they'll do additional work on a house, and then they'll open up the wall and oh wow, look here, here's a penny from when the original work was done. I have a story.
No, I want to get to before we get to that. I was at an art class and I was drawing with paint markers, and on my way to the elevator going down, the elevator opened. I tripped with my bag. A paint marker fell out, and a perfect fall. The paint marker fell down the little hole at the elevator, probably plummeted to the bottom of
the elevator shaft.
At my art class. And I said, if in 50 years, if they ever demolish this building, somebody is probably going to discover this paint marker and say to themselves, wow, I wonder whose paint marker this was. When I'm off this planet, you're off this planet, somebody's going to say, wow, this paint marker came from somebody.
Yeah, exactly. But when you talk about the penny in the wall well, not the paint.
And what I wanted to say about the paint marker, it was like a perfect shot, I accidentally fell out of my bag and fell into the elevator shaft, but it couldn't have fallen any perfect. I ultimately wanted the paint marker. It just happened to fall down.
Yeah, what caused me to think about putting the penny in the wall and such was I worked for, Homes for Humanity, and I would do work for people who that weren't privileged and they needed a house or housing. Anyway, there was one house that we were kind of destroying before they built it up from a foundation. And there was a point where in the foundation there were these old beer bottles that dated back to the 20s and such. And it was I said to myself, wow, these were probably the workers who built the house originally. They drank the beer and then left the empties in the foundation, and it kind of always intrigued me. Wow, what a great story that was, or what? There's a history of that.
That's kind of neat. And also, do you want to share the story about the perfect shot regarding the motor at the car that you told me about?
Yeah,
the lawyer.
When I was working with attorneys and with legal, there was a legal case where, long story short, that there was an accident that involved, or they claimed it involved, the motor in the car. And their allegation was there was a rock or a pebble got thrown into the engine block, causing the engine block to fail. And which is kind of impossible. I mean, it's not happening. And even if a rock does go in there, it's not going to fail the engine. But in court, they had a replica engine in there, and the attorney had a bag of little pebbles. And as he was talking to the jury, he's like, he's tossing these little rocks at the engine, and he's like, what are the odds? It's not gonna happen. A rock is not going to get wedged into this little area of the engine. And as he's throwing the rocks, the pebbles, he throws one, and it lands exactly into the little space, and it goes down into the engine. And, he looked at the jury, he looked at the other side, he looked at the judge. And at that point, he's like, I'm going for a mistrial here because this is not the.
Yeah, basically, you prove the person you're arguing against is correct, at least in the fact that the rock could get into the engine, and there goes all his credibility. So, yeah.
And as an attorney, you got to know your case. You got to know your people too. You know, is there a possibility that rock is going to go? So you don't do a stunt like that, or you don't do an exhibit like that.
Yeah, so if you throw a rock and it goes into the engine and you're saying, oh, it can't go into the engine, there goes all your credibility, right?
Oh, yeah.
I mean,
that case was over.
That case was basically over at that point.
Oh, sure.
And that is what it is.